Are you looking for a simple way to get started reading music notes? If you are a complete beginner or if you have zero theory knowledge, this is something that can help you too, and as little as 5 minutes once a week. Hey piano players, this is Warren. I've been teaching piano for over a decade, and today I'm going to show you the exact method that I use to get my students to learn to read music notes even from their very first lesson. And although their pace of learning might be different because they each have their own individual learning styles, the amazing thing about this approach is that the success rate to date has been 100%. So here's what we'll be covering in today's video. The first section of the video will be a primer, just a basic rundown of the things that you need to know. Then I'm going to share the very affordable materials you're going to need. And then the section after that, I'll show you the exact method itself. And this is an approach that works not only for beginner piano students. Even if you are intermediate, you're gonna wanna check this section out. And then the last section of the video, I will share with you some practice hacks that I like to use that will supercharge this learning process, helping you learn more while saving you time. Now, here are the basic things you're gonna need to know. First, we'll start with the musical alphabet. All you really need to know is that we use the first 7 letters of the English alphabet. It's A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Okay, so we're gonna take a closer look at actual sheet music, and what you'll typically find in sheet music, we have something that is called the grand staff. So you notice right here, these are where all the notes will be located. So the top portion, you see we have the treble clef, and the bottom portion we have bass clef. Now within these lines, we can count, we have five lines if we count from the bottom up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we have 4 spaces in between. 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's the same thing for the bass clef, by the way. And so now I'm gonna go by and name the letters that would go with the corresponding lines and spaces. We have E, G, B, D, F. It's really sloppy writing, sorry. Then we have F, A, C, E. I don't even know what I'm writing. You can't even see that. Just listen to what I'm saying. All right, now if we look at the bass clef, G, B, D, F, A, C, E, and G. And that's just a quick rundown when you get to actual sheet music. Now, if you were to study with a traditional music teacher, they would have you learn what's called a mnemonic. And a mnemonic is basically a phrase that you use as a memorization tool. Now, I'm gonna say something that is kind of controversial. You don't want to learn a mnemonic at all. A mnemonic can be useful, but if you learn one in this scenario, it's really gonna hurt you in the long run. So a mnemonic that a music teacher would have you memorize for the treble clef would be every good boy does fine. But like I said, do not memorize this. Just strike it from your memory. In fact, pretend I never even said this. The reason why learning a mnemonic, such as the one I just described for you, is not good for you is because when you become more advanced, there's gonna come a point where you have to unlearn this mnemonic. And if you've ever had a bad habit that you've been trying to fix for a long time, you'll understand that it's way harder to unlearn something that's not good for you rather than learning a good habit. I see problems like this all the time whenever I get a transfer student from another teacher, or if I have a student who is a little bit more experienced. We have to spend a lot of time just trying to get them to unlearn this mnemonic. What will happen is when I test them on note reading, they waste a lot of time going through this process in their head. Imagine if I told you to spell the word dog and you did it like this. A, B, C, D. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You don't spell dog like that. You just spell D, O, G. But if you use a mnemonic, that's how ridiculous it is. For what it's worth, I have never taught a single mnemonic to any of my students, and I have never even learned one myself. Now, if you unfortunately have memorized these phrases to help you with note reading, don't worry about it, I got you covered. I'll show you how to unlearn it. Now, the last part of this primer are the black and white keys themselves. You'll notice that they're arranged in groups of 2 and 3. Just repeats this pattern up and down the piano or keyboard. So the black keys are actually what are going to help you locate the letters. So if you take the 2 black keys, you'll notice there are 3 white keys underneath that. Left, middle, and right. Left is C, middle is D, the right side is E. If we take the 3 black keys, now we have 4 white keys. The way I like to think of it is outer left, inner left, or center left, center right, outer right. F, G, A, and B. And that's it for the basic stuff. Now, if you're enjoying this video so far, do me a favor and hit the like button. These videos take me a long time to make. I'm really passionate about getting this information and knowledge out there, and this would be a really simple way for you guys to help this channel grow. So I appreciate it in advance. Now, besides having an actual piano or keyboard to play on, you only need the additional materials: a keyboard guide and flashcards. Technically, you can use these materials separately from each other, but it's a much more powerful tool when you combine them together. You'll use the flashcards to visually identify the note itself, and the keyboard guide, once you have it set up on the piano, will help you physically locate it on the actual piano or keyboard. When you use these materials together and start practicing the way I'm going to show you, you will reap the benefits when you start to play actual sheet music. So once you have all the materials set up, we're going to be taking a small range of flashcards. And if you've ever worked out of a method book, you'll be familiar with this. This is what is called middle C position. Not only is it in middle C position, we also separate them into 2 separate groups. We have treble clef. If I flip it over, it's easier to tell this way. And then we have bass clef on the right side. And if I go through these cards, you'll also notice it's a fixed pattern. So it goes C, D, E, F, and G. Same thing with the bass clef as well. And you can notice that I also have the answer side first, because I'm just trying to make things as easy as possible for the student at this point. Especially for beginners, that's a principle that is very important. And you're gonna wanna do it this way too, especially if you are doing this all on your own. I want you to think of the following mantra: accuracy is more important than challenge at this stage. So you basically take each card and try to locate it visually on the keyboard guide with your eyes and physically with your fingers. And you're just getting used to this. You don't actually have to understand what's going on at this point. It's like riding a bike. Now, once this is easier, what you're gonna do is take all the flashcards and mix them up. And you'll notice I still keep them separate. If you mix them up, now you don't know what note is gonna come up next. Now, when this gets easier, what you could do is, with all the flashcards, is mix them all together now. And when I say all together, I mean both groups. So now you can't tell if it's going to be treble clef or a bass clef note that comes out, also in random order. And from there, just slowly expand your range, adding 1 note until you get to an octave, and so on. And you have to be patient, especially at this point, because this is a step that will take the longest. I also forgot to mention, you can just flip it over as well. So now you don't have the answers to work with. It's an additional level of challenge. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that you always want to be double checking your answers. One of the worst things you can do is not check your answers. If you do that, you run the risk of doing it the wrong way without even realizing it. Lastly, if you hit a wall with this approach, let's say it becomes a little bit too difficult, or if you took time off and you're having a hard time getting back into it, just remember to go back as many steps as is necessary and to build yourself back up to where you were. It's like taking time off from the gym. If you take some time off from the gym, when you go back into it, you're not gonna just immediately start crushing the weights that you were crushing before you took some time off. You're going to have to build your strength back up. Now, here are some additional tips if you are not a beginner. If you are more experienced or intermediate, the good thing is you don't have to give up playing your current level of repertoire. You're just going to use everything that I showed you as supplemental practice. So just pick the notes that you are having some difficulty with and customize an approach for yourself using any of the steps that I laid out for you in the previous section. Another really good idea would be to practice easier music, but leaving the keyboard guide on at all times. This works really well because if it's easier music, there are less things you have to pay attention to. So you can just completely focus on the skill of building accuracy with note reading while playing sheet music. It's a really effective strategy just to isolate the thing that you want to work on. Now I'm going to show you some practice hacks that will supercharge this learning process and also to help you unlearn any unuseful mnemonics. The first technique is a very simple one. You are just going to count down. You can start from 5 seconds, 3 seconds, and the ultimate challenge would be to do it as soon as possible. Now you can actually do this anytime in the process that I've shown you from the very first lesson, but I usually hold off on that because it's a bit overwhelming for the student. The only time I'll bring it in a little bit earlier than expected is when I notice them taking too long to figure out the answer or overthinking things. So for instance, if I pulled out this flashcard, I'll start counting down. 3, 2, 1, and then just immediately flip it over whether the student got it correct or not. And a lot of times they actually end up freezing. What I'm trying to have them understand is that I'm trying to train their reaction speed. So just to play something as soon as possible. And another thing I tell them is that when we're training something like that, we're really not focused on accuracy whatsoever. So as long as you are training speed, it's okay if you're making a lot of mistakes. So what I tell them is that I would rather have you play something as fast as possible and have it be wrong than take a long time and try to get every single one of these notes correct. It's speed over accuracy. And this is also what will help you unlearn a mnemonic. This works because the faster you go, the less time you have to cycle through that mnemonic inside your brain. If you're familiar with the phrase ready, aim, fire, this is more like fire, 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 fire. The hardest thing about this is if you're going to do this on your own. Because when I'm teaching my students, I more or less force them to play a note whether it's correct or not. Because like I said, a lot of my students end up freezing. They don't even want to attempt it because they have that fear of failure. So if you're doing this by yourself, it's especially important that you let go of that and just realize you're gonna make a ton of mistakes. Now, why does this work so well? Because if you've been listening, you might think, this is crazy. I don't understand how I'm gonna make progress with this. Because if you think about it, it is basically randomly guessing. But due to what is called the perceptual learning process, as long as you are double checking your answers, the incredible thing is that your mistakes will autocorrect over time. And I've mentioned this in a video or two before. It's a scientifically proven method. One of the reasons why this isn't a really popular learning method probably has to do with the fact that you really don't know what you're doing for a while. You're going to have really inconsistent results. But if you stick with it for a long period of time, you're going to become more accurate. All my students eventually reach a level of fluency, 100% of them. So stick with it for the long term. I promise you, you will get better over time. Now I'm gonna give you one last concept that will really blow your mind. When you study this way, you are going to get better at reading music notes in less time. This is what is called the spacing effect, and it's what I mentioned in the beginning of the video when I was telling you that you only needed to do this 5 minutes once a week. And this has been from my own personal experience. I noticed that even if I spent only 5 minutes every week teaching students how to read notes in this way, they actually began to make progress. Because I know a lot of them, even if I wanted them to, they're not going to practice this on their own at home. Of course, the downside to this is that it takes them a long time, maybe from 3 months to half a year. But like I've been saying so far, eventually they reach a level of fluency. But if you're watching this video, you probably don't want it to take that long. So here is a sample plan. So first, you're gonna take everything that I've taught you in today's video and start doing it on a daily basis. Not only do this on a daily basis, but I recommend breaking it up into multiple sessions throughout the day. The amount of time is not as important as being consistent with this. Now, when it gets easier, you can start to skip a day here and there. You can do it every other day. And then when it gets easier again, you can start to space it out even further. So one day can become a few days can become an entire week can turn into a month, until you get to the point where you might only need to do this once a year. So some guidelines to help you with this is that when it's easier, you can wait a longer period of time. When it becomes a little bit more difficult, shorten that time span. Think of it as Goldilocks. It's just gotta be exactly right. Now, this is such an important concept that I'm definitely gonna do a more deeper dive in a future video, because this is just skimming the surface of how useful this concept is. but I don't have enough time to explain it in today's video. So if you're interested in learning more about it, I highly suggest you do some more research on your own. Now, one last important thing I want to tell you before I end today's video has to do with the phenomena of what they call transfer. Just because you are getting better at reading music notes doesn't mean you're gonna automatically improve when it comes to playing sheet music. These are highly related, but still kind of different skills. So there's going to be a period of time before they start to complement each other. And this effect might be even more pronounced if you are an intermediate piano player. Another way to think about it is as if you are learning a foreign language. At first you have to get your vocabulary up, which is like learning to read music notes. But eventually there comes a time when you have to start practicing and speaking languages to actual people, which is like playing sheet music. So there will be a period of time before you really start to use these together. So as usual with most things in life, it's very important to be patient. So that's it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed that. If it's your first time here, subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, share this video. I'll see you guys next time, and happy practicing.